Welcome to the Front Garden, brought to you by Coolabah Turf. Visit Victoria's premium instant turf supplier at coolturf.com.au.
And welcome to the Front Garden podcast, brought to you by Coolabah Turf. My name's Adam Hompas, and we're here to talk all things landscape with you, whether it's in the garden or on a rooftop or in the hard landscape construction side of things. We're here to get into it. And today we have Michael Casey. He's the director of Evergreen Infrastructure. Pretty much the rooftop garden guru. Evergreen Infrastructure specialises in green infrastructure solutions for the urban and built development. How are you, Michael?
Adam, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming in, mate. Now, looking at your company, it looks quite amazing. So we'd love to start off and get a background of how it started.
How did it start? I've been in the industry for 32 years now, I think, specialising in landscape construction and plant science and horticultural science. And I did my first green roof, I reckon it was early 2000s, and was hooked. And I was watching the way cities were evolving and the more greenery that was needed and the lack of greenery as we expanded our built environment. So I just found the niche of bringing the love of plants and putting plants onto buildings as kind of my calling. So Evergreen Infrastructure evolved maybe about 10 years ago officially, and ever since then we've just been more in the consulting side, building where we can and maintaining it. It's almost been an end-to-end and using our speciality and our knowledge to deliver on projects. So it's been a great one.
Pretty much you do the consulting as well. What about the construction side of things?
Where we can, we try and keep a lot of it in-house. Yeah. We specialise more in the extensive green roofs, which are the really shallow ones and the tougher ones to work on. You'll see a lot of the buildings now, especially the multi-res sites, that are getting some roof gardens up there, more social spaces, but we tend to look at them as intensive, so a deeper substrate. And you'll find a lot of the landscape boys are doing a lot of those now, so they're great. The extensive ones, shallower substrate, harder to work on, harder plants to specify into, and also harder to build, I feel. But they're good. Yeah, so we do all of the building where we can.
So when you say the harder substrate, was that right? So what does that mean?
Substrate meaning the growing media.
Yep.
So if we've got about 150 mil to 200 mil to play with, not a lot of plants are going to work in that. So what we try and do is we work on what is the purpose of the roof garden. Most of the times it's not going to be for social space. People won't be attending it. So it could be for stormwater mitigation, thermal capacity. It could be for visual from other buildings or other parts of the building down onto the roof. So we've got to work out what growing media or soil, as we call it down on ground level, what is going to work from a drainage perspective, a light weight perspective, because there might be weight restrictions on the roof. So that's harder to specify in and work out then what plants will grow in that media.
So when you take on a project, are you given what the maximum weight allowance is?
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Not always.
How does that work?
Yeah, look, the problem is with a new build, we do have the engineers that have specified what is required. We work within those parameters, but the problem is with the retrofitting of older buildings that we are definitely governed by what's there. Yeah. There is some fluctuations we can do on, the exterior parts of the building where there's a bit more weight loading, but a lot of it is working back with the engineers to understand what we can do. And also the growing media companies, the soil companies who are going to engineer these growing media substrates.
Yeah, so you'd need to know how heavy the product's going to be, especially when it's wet.
Or saturated.
Saturation is huge, isn't it?
And the thing is with these extensive roof gardens is if we're going to look at weight loading and a saturated weight loading, we then got to look at the plants and the plant mass that is going to increase over the years. So take that on, people on the roof to maintain it. Growing media, the void will fill with root mass. So it changes again. So it's an evolving weight that either can fluctuate up or down.
Obviously, with your new builds that you're given the engineers' reports on, as if you're doing something in the existing, how do you determine what it can take? So, for example, do you have to get the engineers in? Do they have to measure the depth of roofs? How does that work?
A lot of the times Well, a lot of the buildings that we've been doing are around 5 to 7 years old.
Yeah.
So the drawings are still there. We found some of the residential sites of the multi-res builds, the engineers put in their input, but also the guys who are doing the concrete work. They understand their structural side of how they've built that concrete, especially for the roof, because they haven't allocated any weight loading outside of just roof deck. So they're the good ones to go to in the way of information. Yeah.
You said something interesting before about obviously, if there's a garden built on top of a roof and there's other buildings looking in. So does that get factored into how the aesthetics of the garden and can it play a part in the neighbours? Does that make sense? So
Yeah, it
everyone's going to
does.
be looking in.
It does. It's funny, about 10 years ago, if you said to someone, put an extensive green roof up on your building, but you won't be able to walk up there and attend it or use it or sit in it, they'll say, why? And we always used to try and lead with, but the building next to you will see it. And they're like, well, we're paying for their view. And I go, it will come around. And now we're starting to go to jobs where they'll specify, hey, we want one like the one we can see across the road. So it's kind of that borrowed landscape that we always used to talk about. The borrowed landscape just happens to be on another building that someone else will benefit from seeing. Look, there are a heap of environmental benefits that come with it, but the social side of not being able to use it, being able to see it, that helps.
There was something else I was thinking about too is obviously when it's really hot on these rooftops, how do you manage the heat?
To work on,
as in to
It's
work
tough.
on, but as into the plants. So obviously if heat's radiating down on concrete, it's going to get really hot. How do you have to select plants that are going to suit that hot environment?
As soon as you put substrate on a building roof, you've cooled it down.
You've cooled it, yeah.
So you can even have like a brown roof, which is just ballast or something like that. The plants themselves will create a microclimate. So you're going to get a cooling of sometimes 15, 20 degrees.
Yeah.
Working on them is tough, and I mean the installing part, because in most cases you've got a black bitumen liner or a heat-on kind of liner that is radiating up to 70 degrees. So that is hard. Now, the hard part about that is as you are installing, then you've got that additional heat until the roof starts creating that microclimate.
Yeah.
So, there's the benefits, obviously, outcomes of heat reduction are there, but there's always that transition period. And plants might be in a 14 centimetre pot. It's not a big plant. So there's a lot of soil that's going to be exposed. We tend to probably over-specify the plants per square metre, sometimes up to 10 or 11 plants per square metre. And we expect there's going to be some die out. Now, there could be arguments around why we're specifying extra plants in when we know they're going to die. Some of it is for that transitional period because that growing media, if there's 20% exposed, that's heating up.
Yeah, and the plant's going to get under that much stress.
Correct.
And just cook.
And as you know, drip irrigation, which is a lot of the irrigation we use up on those roofs, they don't establish plants. Proper hand watering, overhead watering is what establishes. So you do have those periods, especially in summer, where you're giving a little bit more nurture to the establishment period.
With the irrigation side of things, do you prefer overhead sprayers like when you install?
It depends on the roof. If you're 30, 40 stories high, you've always got some sort of wind. So, you may not get full 100% coverage with the irrigation. Drip irrigation works really well, but again, there's an establishment period which hand watering does benefit from. There's even subsoil irrigation where you drop it down to the bottom of the substrate and let the wicking process bring it back up to the top. But we've found that 200, 250 mil substrates, you'll have a 100 mil void at the top. Now, what that means is you've got a dry patch that isn't pulling the water up, but you might have used a 50 mil plug plant that is getting that's getting dried out. So again, establishment of hand watering.
That's interesting. The things that I wouldn't have thought about is I love spray irrigation, but obviously the wind.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
For anyone who isn't aware, do you want to explain a bit about the wicking process?
Yeah, so obviously the right substrate will allow a water reservoir at the bottom, the natural heating and pulling of the sunlight to pull water molecules back from the bottom up to the top.
Right.
You see a lot in wicking gardens and food production, but it does work in the roof industry. The problem is you're not just working with the sun, you're working with wind. I always say wind damage is more prevalent on roof gardens, I think, than sun.
Well, because as you said, you've always got some form of wind, so that would come into your design elements too, whether we...
It does. Yeah, it might be the fact that in summer you get northerlies, but in winter you'll get cold southerlies.
Yeah.
And you're open to both, you know. And you know what it's like here in Melbourne. We can have a 40-degree day
and then
followed by a 15-degree change with a southerly that's hitting. Now, plants that might have adapted over the summer period have had that 15-degree or even colder, pre-10-degree kind of chill, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, we're going to drop our leaves, so you're in big strife again.
Are you very conscious of when you're planting, especially on rooftops, like in the middle of summer?
Yeah, I don't know. Look, you could ask any landscaper what's the best time to plant, and everybody's going to have a differing opinion. It comes down to, again, establishment. If you've been able to factor in or budget in additional watering, and that's what it comes down to. It's additional watering and a bit of nurturing. Any time of the year is fine. Yeah, we've done some winter ones that have succeeded. We've done some ones that succeeded. So yeah,
I'd like to go back a little bit and just have a chat about yourself and your background. Obviously, you mentioned before, so you studied plant science.
Yes, I did diploma in what was then the Bachelor of Applied Science back at Burnley.
Good old Burnley.
Yeah, I know, I loved it back then, and I just enjoyed the plant science. So that was the horticultural science, I should say.
Yeah.
Loved the landscape construction, but obviously part of those courses that didn't bring in that construction element, and I did a lot of that in the early days. So yeah, that was probably the start of my interest in working both construction and softscapes or plantscapes.
So what did the course involve with the horticultural science? Like the DNA of the plants and things?
Yeah, it was everything from just understanding the plant itself, how it grows, how it survives, what to look for when you're designing as well. I think a lot of it back then was always ground-based landscaping. You know, there wasn't that plant specification for on-structure landscapes like roof gardens, etc. So, yeah, it was more around just good horticultural knowledge, which I think is a backbone for a lot of the work we do in our landscape industry. You know, you might not be into planting, but you've still got to create a landscape that's going to be, complementary to the plants that are going to go in it.
100%, because that's something that I do think is lacking a little bit in the construction apprenticeship. I remember through MIDA, it was skimmed over. Yeah. And it's really important.
Even the certificate, the horticulture certificates, I think a lot of good, botanical understanding is being lost a little bit. Now, again, you don't have to love plants to go and study them, but you do need to understand them.
You do, yeah, exactly.
And that's my industry. Green infrastructure, landscape on structure, we are putting plants into inhospitable zones and areas. You need to know how they're going to work.
Well, yeah, because otherwise you're building something and if it all dies...
Yeah. Yeah, you can be the best landscape builder. Yeah, correct.
What's happened to my rooftop? Well, it's brown.
It's good for me because I get some more work out of it. But, it is a shame because we do see failed projects based upon not the workmanship or the specification work of putting the structure together. It's usually the plant selection and then post-maintenance.
I just picked up on something I'd like to chat about because I know that it's something that I've looked into. How do you put that into your contract about if plants die? Is that covered by yourself?
Yeah.
How do you determine that? Yeah,
what we try and do with any contract going forward is a maintenance period that's carried out by us. The maintenance period or the maintenance documents should specify not just 0 to 1 year because these assets are growing, they're evolving. They should be really up to about a 10-year plan because the building occupants, owners, whoever's paying the bills needs to understand that they're infrastructure, right? So on one hand, the plants appreciate in value. They grow, they get older, they look more mature. But the infrastructure side, if it's a green roof, depreciates. So where are these costs going to come and where do they actually intercept? The appreciation, depreciation kind of crossover where we got to put more money back into the green roof, the structure, or more money into the plants as they grow. Now, if it's an establishment plant period, we do expect loss. And we say that to the client. We expect maybe 5% loss as plants evolve and as plants outgrow other plants. So that's just the natural progression of the plants growing on a green roof themselves.
And I think that's a key thing for any landscaper or gardener is to make sure they're educating the clients that even though we're doing exactly from the start, even though we're doing everything right, we've got the correct media drainage, it is likely X amount of plants may not survive, because we've had calls before saying, why is this one only dead and everything else is fine?
and we all know, we've all planted out hundreds, if not thousands of plants. You may have, and I'll use an example, 12 magnolias and one dies. Now, there could be a million reasons why that's happened. And, educating the client about, hey, they're living structures. They might not have taken, might not have got enough water. And that's the same on the roof garden too. We find that we get not rain shadows, but water irrigation shadowing where it just doesn't hit an area. Now, that's not a failure. That's just the fact that the roof is evolving. So, yeah, as long as you're not hitting them up with, hey, we've had 90% plant loss.
Well, then there's something going on with
the
method.
Correct, 100%. So we just want to say to them, expect plant loss. Natural progression, it's like thinning out a garden when it starts getting too mature, and we do that with our roof gardens.
So with the amount of houses that obviously the government's looking to introduce, it's something like to build 1.2 million new houses in the coming years. Do you think that the vertical gardening is going to come into its own in Australia, so that'll really take off and perhaps be part of the planning? Or it should be?
Yeah, vertical gardening is a tough one, and we'll touch on that in a sec. I think the building industry or the need for housing is a must.
Yeah.
Whether it be more multi-residential or single dwelling or dual occupancy on blocks, whatever it may be. The bigger problem that we're having is that we're not putting enough green back into these spaces. So we're building boundary to boundary. We're putting more impermeable space, flooring down or surfaces down. So we've got a heating issue. Some of these suburbs will be hot boxes. They're giving street trees not enough coverage. You're recommending or being recommended that you have one tree on your property, but the property isn't big enough to allow for that one tree. And then how is it managed? First thing people say is, it's growing over my house. I'm worried it's going to drop limbs or it's shadowing my house. But the minute they take it out, they've lost, all that nice cooling effect. I think we've got to look at the way we work building and greenery or green space together. Getting back to your question about vertical's a tough one. It's an expensive way to green. I think we could probably get a lot more benefit out of using trees or urban forests or dedicating spaces to some more cooling greenery, whether it be shrubbery, rain gardens, whatever. But vertical is a hard one. And, they often laugh and say it's kind of a landscape on life support. And it can be, because the minute you cut the water off, you are in strife within sometimes 24 hours. So vertical greenery has its space, probably more in the cities.
Yeah.
But I think smart building out in our suburbs will help cool them. And even manage the stormwater issues, which we're going to see a lot more of. But yeah, that's a big one, because we need more houses, but we don't want to encroach onto existing agricultural land. We're pushing it further out.
Well, that's quite interesting, because obviously when they build the new dual locks and things, they've got certain retention systems that obviously drip feed your stormwater into the system, so it just trickle flows out because it influxes, and it's. Yeah, as you said, we're capturing all this water. Where does it go? Yeah. And it could obviously pollute the waterways and do all sorts of things. So,
and we could use that water again too, back into the garden. I think it should be mandatory that we're capturing and recycling water for garden use, not potable water.
I agree 100% with that. I think the only issue that we've found every time we try to hook onto an irrigation system, the amount of blockages you get, because obviously the diaphragm in the irrigation solenoid is so fine and prone to leaks then. So obviously when you're designing these rooftop gardens, do you use recycled reclaimed water? We
try to. So a lot of, again, there's a big cost that's associated with this, but a lot of the multi-res sites, like the big, 300-400 unit apartment buildings, they capture their own water. So we try and encourage them to put a green roof up at the top, capture it from there and allow that water to filter through. So like you said, to avoid the extra filtration. The problem is, and I know I'm going to jump on topics a little bit here, capturing water on those big properties is a lot of roof space. And Melbourne can be a dusty place. You know, you think about a good westerly wind that brings in all that mallee soil. The minute you get all that rooftop capture of silt, it's going to stuff up and affect your water quality. And it's also going to block the filters. If we have a green roof there, we can help filter that water out. Now, there's a lot of good landscape on structure, so they might not be a roof garden, but it might be a landscape on top of the car park. Those landscapes we're finding are doing a better job of filtering that water before it goes down to the tanks to then push back up into irrigation. So any given time we are recommending, I won't say we're pushing hard, but we're trying our best, but recommending to the planners and the architects to say just capture it, recycle it, reuse it, but allow it to go through some filtration, natural filtration systems, and the greenery helps.
Do you have any issues with water getting up in these big buildings in terms of pressure? Because I'm assuming it has to pump up, and what if the pump, you have to be careful about what you're putting in, the amount of sprayers, drip line or whatever? Yeah,
there's a project we worked on in the city, and I think it was about 40-something stories high, and it had facade plantings the whole way up. That had to have boosters to go up to the top to then filter back down. So, water pressure's hard. You know, I always love listening to the builders talk about how they pump concrete up that high, you know. It's got to be the right temperature, right consistency just to pump it up, you know, 30, 40 stories high.
Just to get it there.
And it's the same water too. You know, it has no problem making its way back down.
No, it's getting it back up. It'll keep going down.
It'll find the smallest little crack, but it's hard to push up and retain consistency and pressure, especially if you're doing facade plantings or balcony plantings.
G'day, Jason Hodges here. Like me, you know that life happens on lawn, and my mates at Strathair Instant Lawn have been producing world-class grass for over 50 years. Whether you need a play space for the kids, a barbie area for your mates, or an outdoors spot for the pooch, Strathair offer a lawn for every yard or project. From the hardy Tiff Tough Hybrid Bermuda to the greener in winter fescue. Call Strathair for a free quote today or go online to strathair.com.au.
If you do come across any water leakages through a roof, touch wood, you don't, or maybe you have, how do you deal with it? Is there certain technology or processes that you can find the leak and fix it without being too invasive?
Yeah, no, there is. And it's a good question. It's one I want to touch on, especially from the fact there's a myth or a fear with a lot of builders and designers that green roofs leak. The green roof doesn't leak, the roof leaks. And usually it's either somewhere a fault in the construction, whether it be a weak point, a crack, or a sealed area that's it's been compromised, but it's usually the waterproof membrane. Now, go back to step, if you're a waterproofing contractor, and this is no way having a go at their installation process, but are they actually informed that they're putting a green roof on top of their waterproof membrane? And probably not in some cases. I'm pretty sure if they were brought into the design discussions early in the piece, we would see them specify a product that would be resilient to green roofs.
Yeah.
Now, your question is around the leaking point. There are some companies out there that do some fantastic work, and we can pinpoint it to almost 100 by 100 spot on a roof, and we dig that spot up. There's a lot of sensors that go into the roof. They come in with their probes and they can literally pinpoint it to 100 mil by 100 mil section.
So you'll already have sensors in the roof?
If the client has allowed that into the budget.
For that reason, in case something leaks, so they can probe it, and it'll say if there's moisture in the vicinity.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Look, there are points where water may be running down the slope of the roof, and it may be coming from another area, or it might be another leak from another. Yeah, there could be other things at play, but the technology is getting much better. And so is the waterproof membranes too. You know, you think Europe and North America have been doing this a long time. You know, they've been putting 40, 50 plus years, and their waterproof membranes, half of them are saying you should have 40 years at least in these membranes. So they've got a lot of technology and knowledge in their installation. We're catching up.
I was going to say, do you think we're catching up quickly, or is it taking a bit of time for Australia to follow?
Yeah, we've got to understand and defunk the risk factors that everybody fears with green infrastructure. I think if we look at the fact that they're an integral part of cooling cities and also greening cities, we'll start taking a little bit more notice. At the moment, green infrastructure is expensive here in Australia because there's not a lot of us doing it. The process of installing it is tough. Once we start understanding the right materials or the right products or having our process built into the process of the build itself, we'll see costs come down. So, like always, things will improve, things will get better, and I think we'll find the right mix here in Australia. We can't keep looking to the North American and the European model because they don't have the same temperature fluctuations as we have here.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's unique here. You know, I could specify a green roof here in Victoria, which will be completely different to one up in Brisbane. So they're the things that we've got to consider. We're a country of different climates.
Obviously, because Melbourne's got your extreme highs and extreme lows, and Brizzy and Queen are a bit more balanced out.
And they have big hits of rain. You know?
They do for a long time, don't they?
You got to imagine we're creating swimming pools or little ponds on top of a structure, and you need that thing to drain. But you also don't need that thing to drain as quick to dry it out. So you're constantly irrigating it. So there's a fine balance. And
especially considering with the type of downpours we get, you don't want it to be too slow that it might build up and start overflowing on the side.
And we're working on one at the moment that used to be a retention facade.
Okay.
Which means that the facade of the building held water and it drained to the next level and the next level and the next level down. So we've tried to turn it now into a planted facade, and and that way we'll change the drainage, but we've got to stop it from taking in too much water and then potentially sending scoria and everything over the top.
So you're saying with that drainage facade is that it'll filter down to a garden bed?
Yep, into another garden bed, another garden,
and just follow itself.
Yeah,
through.
which is great concept, but at the same time, if you mix your substrates or not get them right from the start, you've got potential for overflowing. Like you said, infiltration rate.
How do you go about quoting these projects, Michael? Well, seriously, I'm thinking...
It's tough. The thing that we try and work on with any client is when we design, if a landscape architect gives us a concept of a green roof going in, I like to take it back to what we call a pre-design stage. Let's check the design before you submit the design. So that way then we can ensure that it's going to work. It can then move to the next stage of planning. And then by the time the client has accepted and understood that, all relevant parties who are associated with the build understand, we'll call it green roof because we'll keep using that as a topic point. Everybody around the table needs to understand what is being built. That way then we can price it easier. If it's a retrofit and the client has said, we're just going to put a green roof in now, we have to go back to the start.
It's a lot involved.
It's a lot, even from the timing of where the build's up to. And what I mean by that, an example, we did a roof garden and we educated, to the best of our knowledge, the foreman and the trades that were there. But the plumber didn't understand truly what we were doing. So we were on the 7th floor putting a roof garden in. He was up to the 4th floor with water. That was a long time we had to wait till he got water.
Really?
Yeah, mains water up to us. So we had hoses, going from level 4 to level 7 just to hand water. Now, that's not at any fault to him, but how do you price that in?
Yeah, exactly.
So unfortunately at the moment in Australia, we price in some risk. And that helps, but that doesn't make for a budget-conscious project.
You can price it in a risk, and obviously we all do that, but also can you have some clauses in your contract too to say
100%,
you have to, otherwise you go broke.
There was the recent Treasury building where we put the green roof on top of that one, and we had strict parameters around when we could work. The politicians sit and they need to meet and they need 24-hour access, but we could only work within certain periods of the day and mostly on weekends. There were time limits or everything else, so you've got to factor in big risk there. Again, it doesn't make for a cost-effective project, but there are points where you just go, you know what, we've just got to be very, very clear. Transparency is huge in our sector. Why can't we take it up today? Oh, we can't take it up on the crane because it's
wind.
Or it's raining.
That was my next question to you. How do you get the materials up? I'm assuming a lot of these buildings have your service elevators and things. Do they have sort of the service cranes on the side? Can you get makeshift cranes?
You can get some. You can get some makeshift cranes. They don't take a lot of weight.
Yeah. Okay.
If there's a tower crane and you're still part of the build process, that is your ideal spot. So you need to communicate that and say, hey, look, the tower crane's up. We need to get our materials up. That helps. We're doing a project at the moment that's 5 stories up and it's all going up via the lift, the actual office lift, not a goods lift. So, that's rated to 600
600
kilos.
capacity, not much for soil.
I think it's got a door opening of about 900 mil where you can't get a pallet in. So, unfortunately, those retrofit ones means that a really good client, and luckily it's a state government job, so they've been very good clients, they're sending everyone home to work. So we've got access to the building because it becomes then a big kind of interruption to people's workday. You're trekking, tons of materials up through their building and up through their stairwell and up through their lift, and taking that lift away from their ability to go from floor to floor.
Exactly. But even with the tower cranes, I was just thinking, I'm assuming when you're on a building site, you can't just go, pick up this, please take it up. They'll say, we'll be ready in an hour, ready in an hour and a half, ready in 2 hours. I've only got 10 minutes.
Yeah, so you'll have to book in.
So you've got to book it in.
Yeah, and then once you've booked it in, you've also got to make sure your delivery's arrived. And if you've got a semi sitting out the front that's blocking 5 other semis, you're not really the nicest guy on the job.
Block.
And the thing is people are already doubting you because they're going, hey, we don't know what greenery is on a roof, or we don't know what greenery is on a balcony. So you have these circumstances where you're not treated with the same respect in the building industry. So you might be nudged back down the list, but a good crane operator will always see that, hey, they're sitting there waiting.
I just recall in commercial industry waiting to get a little dingo over and we had to wait. Yeah. It was like 5 hours and then that was it. That's why I asked the question.
Again, it comes back to the transparency. You've almost got to tell them that if it doesn't go up now, it's going to cause headaches for them later. And it will, because it'll be probably us whinging.
Probably, exactly.
And they don't want to listen to us whinge. They just want to get us out of the way. Get us up on the roof and just forget about us.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to do it. Just start kicking up a stink.
Yeah, exactly.
Hands up in the air with your shovel.
Yeah, I'll hang off the edge on the rope and you have to bring in a rescue crew.
Just drag it up.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
Going back a little bit more, obviously you've had a lot of experience in Singapore. I think that's quite interesting. Do you want to elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, Singapore came about. I was at an awards night actually for Australian Institute of Horticulture, and we were receiving an award for a project we did, and there was a Singapore representative there from their landscape industry. Great guy, and I met him, and he said, "Come over." I said, I will. So I went over there and got to meet the Landscape Institute over there, and they're a fantastic group of men and women. And then I got involved with National Parks Singapore, who are the government agency who look after all greenery. And before I knew it, I was working with NParks, National Parks. I was working with Landscape Institute. I was working with the education facilities over there. And I would present at conferences. I would run workshops. Wow. And I think it was a pinching moment where I look back and go, they're one of the greenest cities in the world, and they've got this guy from Australia who is learning about the Australian industry, and I'm presenting to them on topics. So, yeah, it was pretty good.
That's amazing.
I work a lot with them and still do now, but they do it really great. Yeah, I've now got to the point where I run garden tours over there, and we go and look at green roofs and green walls, and it's been fun.
So you're still actively going back and forth?
Yeah, go back every year. A lot of my suppliers come out of Singapore. Yeah. Your listeners might be familiar with like Elmich products, and I'm good friends with the Elmich crew, and they're a good case study to look and learn from because they've greened every part of their city, but they're also a country that wiped out natural vegetation.
Natural vegetations, and built cities.
And built cities. So it's a case study to see what not to do, but also what to do when you are greening a city.
what's something that really stood out to you there? Because I'd imagine there'd be some form of design technique or engineering that's just amazing. So whether it's the way that they do their roof gardens, anything that you think could be brought to Australia.
Look, the way I'm going to go probably back to the basics, it's government incentive. And I know that probably sounds a bit boring, but when you've got the government behind you on greening, you know you'll get greening projects. So they subsidise the industry. So if you build on 10 square metres of land, you have to put that equivalent back in greenery.
Yep.
Now, if you put more, you get more incentive, and it's all cash. So that cash would then go back to your greening. So if it was $1 million greening, they'll subsidise $500,000. If you go beyond 100% green inclusion and go up to 150%, you will get maybe an extra level on your building. So your permit process will go through.
Wow.
So there's great incentives. Now, like I said, I know that's a boring part of greening, but we've got to start somewhere. If I look at some of the works they're doing it on the back of labour that is affordable.
Yeah.
So if you're building big green walls, let's say some of the green walls over there are huge, here in Australia to maintain it would be costly.
Or because we've got the unions at a different level of EVA
we
and that
do,
type of thing.
yeah. Our wages here are a lot higher than the labourers over in the Singapore districts. So that is probably a bit of a tough one here to replicate. Also, you're on the equator in Singapore, so you can grow. You can drop a plant on a piece of concrete, it'll grow.
Yeah.
Here we've got some more complexities, so it makes it tough.
I'm just picturing it.
Yeah, I know.
Growing in concrete.
Well, I've seen some green walls that work over in Singapore. I go, God, they wouldn't work anywhere else.
That's unbelievable.
So we've got to remember that being in the tropics and being here in Melbourne, it's not the same. It's not apples for apples.
I just love that, obviously, as you said. So if they're doing a building over there and 20% of that is green, you're saying that 20% of the budget will be subsidised by the government.
Yep.
Imagine if Australia did that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's what we're pushing for. We when I say we, the collective industry, and there's not a lot of us, but we're trying to get it federally funded to do more work, but also recognised as an asset class. So if green infrastructure can be seen as an asset class, then it's maintainable. If it's maintainable, budgets have to actually be allocated to it. And I talked the example before about a green roof. The structure depreciates and the plants appreciate in value.
Yeah.
So to assign budgets means that asset classing sits like with your HVACs or everything else about a building that depreciates. So we do need it to happen here. And be taken seriously. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have.
Do you think it's getting there?
Slowly. One thing that myself and two other colleagues did was we organised 14 of the key industry bodies around Australia to get together. I think what we're very good at in Australia is working in our silos. The engineers will work and they won't work with the green infrastructure, but they need to. The planners, the architects, etc. So what we did was pull them all together to be one unified voice, to go to federal government and say, hey, we are working together. We are going to continue working at greening our cities. We know the complexities around it, but we need the federal government to come in from a policy perspective.
So is that part of an association that you're with?
No, it's just off the back. I've worked with a lot of associations over my years.
I saw that.
We... two other colleagues, we finished a podcast, funny enough, for the Horde Innovation on the future of urban greening. And we thought, if we are going to see urban greening really work here in Australia, and when I say urban greening, green infrastructure, we need to have everybody and every party working together. So landscape construction needs to be brought into the design table at the design table early, not afterthought.
Absolutely.
You think of any contract or any plans you get sent, you're always the afterthought and you're always the industry that is valued out.
Yeah.
We haven't got enough money or we haven't got enough time or I need you here tomorrow, not in a month's time. So value us, bring us in early, and that was part of the discussion. These silos is just a waste of time.
So when you say silos, what do you mean by that?
just people working in their own little laneway.
Yeah.
You know, it's again, and this is not to put down any industry, but landscape architects will work up until planning.
Okay.
And there might not be that crossover where the landscape construction or the garden maintenance, God help the garden maintenance, they're the afterthought, aren't they? So all these people miss out on key infrastructure knowledge in the early parts of the planning. That's the part I want to see more of, where everybody is sitting around the design table. It's a multidisciplinary build, any green infrastructure. And I often think of, we do a lot of the maintenance ourselves, but imagine being a maintenance company coming in 2 years later and not having any design documents, any technical specification documents to go off, and being governed by a small budget that was allocated to you to try and maintain these urban greening projects.
It's going in with a bit of a blindfold, isn't it?
Very much, yeah. And we'll see more failures, which then just discourages planners and builders and developers from wanting to do these.
So you've got your own maintenance team, is that right?
We have a smallish one that works in with our contracted builds, yeah.
How large is your team?
We're down to 7 people now.
Yeah,
we've got a couple of designers and specifiers. I consult. We bring in landscape construction companies to come and help us build. The maintenance, again, on a roof garden, extensive roof gardens don't require a lot of maintenance. So we're able to manage multiple projects and not need a big crew of people.
Yeah.
But it's more about we take on ones that we know need that little bit more of a specialised care.
When you are trying to manage some of these projects, do you have any particular sort of project management software? What do you do to sort of take care of it? Google Drive? Is it paper? What are we doing?
Yeah, look, from managing the roof, each roof is different. So to communicate, we will use software wherever we can. So everyone has shared folders, files.
Sure.
The biggest thing about green infrastructure is you need to report back to the client. So capturing everything on photos, document sharing, file sharing, whatever it may be, but we like to have our clients have access to our information. Report writing is huge. So everything, we try and keep as clever and as efficient as possible.
That's a good way to do it. It has to be.
Yeah,
'cause otherwise it'll fail.
Well, 100%. And also the fact is everybody loves to point a finger when something goes wrong. And we've got a roof garden that sprung a leak. Now, the roof garden, again, wasn't the one that sprung the leak. The structure was the one that sprung the leak. But the first thing is, let's go to the roof garden crew because it must have been their problem. And we've come down to, we think it was when they do the safety audit on the roof anchors, which is what we tie off onto, they have to apply pressure to them. And when they pull up, it can create a little void in the roof space. Something as simple as that. For us to keep an auditing process, it's all about auditing. We can then go back and say to the client, well, hey, look, we think this is correlated with the inspection, and we're able to then safeguard ourselves.
Yeah.
Because these are big multi-million-dollar projects.
That's the thing.
You don't want to be, we're not a huge company. We don't want to be held accountable financially for something that we didn't do, and you need to have evidence.
Because you're the last one there.
Always the last one.
We're the ones that are probably going to be, well, you must have done something.
Exactly. It's us landscapers.
Just before we go, just curious to know what's next for Evergreen. What are you thinking? What's on the horizon? Look,
we'll continue working in the green roof space. I love the engineered side of green infrastructure, which is green roofs, green walls and facades. I think we'll just keep working on the roofs.
Yeah.
I'll keep doing I'm lucky enough to be paid to fly around the world and talk on green infrastructure. So I'm pretty happy and proud about that. So to bring back anything from overseas, or even some of what the cities are doing, is a nice inclusion for us as a company, but we then can provide that back to the client. So I want to add more value for our clients and have them see that green infrastructure isn't expensive, that they can include it in their next project.
But what a fantastic thing that you're getting paid, as you said, to go around and use your knowledge, share your knowledge.
Yeah, and learn.
Yeah.
None of us ever stop learning.
No.
I'm just lucky in my industry. I've got a lot more to learn.
That's fantastic. Really awesome, Michael. Look, Very, very interesting chat with you today, mate. I'm very well educated now in the rooftop space. Don't know if I want to get into it personally, but
it's nice up on a roof.
I'd love to come have a
views.
look. But look, thank you very much for your time, mate.
Pleasure.
And it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. So thanks for joining us.
Done. Thanks a lot.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Front Garden, brought to you by Cooler by Turf. That was an amazing chat with Michael Casey, and just the things that the company is doing is next level. If you like this episode, feel free to share it on all your socials, and we look forward to talking to you next time on The Front Garden.